All right, one of the most important things about making a good coconut cake is making sure you've got a pure white layer because it's just beautiful when you slice into it. Now today I am using a cake mix, and when you make a cake mix white cake, you do not use your egg yellows or yolks, as you guys would probably call it. We called them yellows growing up. But anyway, so we're going to be using the egg whites, not egg yolks in this recipe. We're going to use the box recipe. The only thing we're going to do is add a little bit of coconut extract. Typically, when I do a cake mix, I put all my liquids in and then the container of the mix. And that way, the mix doesn't get stuck to the bottom of the bowl easy. So we're going to be using a cup of water, half cup of cooking oil, and I'm using corn oil. We're going to use a teaspoon of coconut extract. All right, since these are fresh eggs, I'm going to use my hand to catch the yolk. That's the easiest way to do it. And you're going to want 3 egg whites. These are fresh, so even the shell is a little different when you got a fresh egg. Boy, that's quite a difference in the yellow on that one and the yellow in that one for a fresh egg. I think that might be from one of my young chickens. We've got chickens that have just gotten old enough to lay, and I bet that's one of their eggs because the yolk looks so different. All right, 3 egg whites going in. I'm gonna wash our hands. This is gonna be a moist and delicious cake. I'm using cake mixes because I have a lot of them right now. I bought them on sale and they need to be used. If you want to make a good white cake layer from scratch, I have a great recipe that was my mama's and she catered, so it's good. You can go onto our website, click Southern Recipes, then Cakes and Frostings, scroll all the way down to the bottom and choose white cake layers, all right? It's a delicious recipe if you want a good homemade white cake layer. But today we're using a shortcut. And I'm gonna show you how easy it is. We've got the cake mix. Since you've got 3 yellows, you can actually make some good old pudding with that if you want to, using one of our recipes as well. Now I'm going to bake these in 8-inch cake pans. This is my little handy dandy hand mixer. And when you're doing a cake mix, it's really easy just to use a hand mixer. Now I'm going to beat this on a medium speed for a couple of minutes, just like it says on the box. Now we've got 3 cake pans. And I want this to be a good moist coconut cake. We are going to use baker's coconut. This is not a fresh coconut cake. And I am going to put parchment in the bottom of these pans. If you want to make a sheet cake with this, of course you can. You do not have to make round layers and ice them. I know it's a little harder for some of you to do that. If you want to put it in a sheet cake pan and ice it in the pan and serve it out of the pan, then be my guest. But just know that it's going to take your cake a lot longer than 20 minutes to cook. If you're going to use a sheet pan, don't open that oven for at least 30 minutes. And it's probably going to take it closer to 40 minutes to get all the way done in the center. All right, just giving you a heads up on that. 350 degrees. And we will see you guys in a few minutes. Don't open that oven for at least 20 minutes. All right, one thing I will tell you about making a white cake. It's really better to cook it down on 325 than 350. Just make sure that you don't get it too brown because that's part of it being beautiful too when you cut it. So as soon as it sets, and I mean as soon as you can touch the top and it spring back, It don't have to be brown for a white layer. You're going to get it out of the oven and let it cool 5 to 10 minutes. Now this one that was in the back will be darker than the other two automatically. But let it cool a couple of minutes, 5 minutes or so, and then you're going to flip it upside down on some parchment, and then we'll ice the sucker up. All right, for this cake, we are going to make our homemade buttercream icing, and you'll see down below it tells you how to make peanut butter buttercream, pina colada buttercream, coconut buttercream, chocolate. So we're going to be doing the coconut today for our coconut cake, and we will be using Baker's sweetened flaked coconut. Baker's has the best moist coconut. If you're going to make a coconut cake, I suggest you pay the extra $1 and get the best instead of the store brand. The store brands are never as moist as Baker's, okay? All right, this icing is thinner than a regular buttercream because you're going to put coconut on it. And I don't like for it to be real thick because then it gets too rich to me for a really good coconut cake. It's my favorite icing for any coconut cake, whether it's fresh coconut or flaked coconut. I would not use anything else, really. Now, for a typical buttercream, I would use a cup of butter, but we're going to use cream of coconut. Now, let me talk about this cream of coconut. Cream of coconut is not coconut milk, and you have to find it in the grocery store. You may have to go and ask somebody where to get it. They're going to have it, but you may have to find it, okay? And different grocery stores have it on different aisles, so just look for that. Sometimes they're where the Mexican food is, and sometimes they're where the pie fillings are. You just don't ever know. So we're going to be using a ½ cup of butter in this recipe because we'll be using the cream of coconut for the rest of the oils that we typically use in a buttercream. So I'm going to mix up this butter. And now what I tell you to do is open your can of cream of coconut, and you're going to beat it well. Because sometimes they'll have a layer of grease on the top, coconut oil, or they may not. It's according to how fresh it is. But most of the time, there is a layer on the top when you open it, or it could even be down at the bottom. This one, you don't see one. So I just like to tell you guys to open it up, pour it out, and mix it. Now this one doesn't have any hard coconut grease, I guess is what you'd call it. So really I don't have to mix it up. But typically when you open them, they do, and I like to beat it well. This one's a little thinner than the norm. I don't know if I've ever bought this brand before. All right, so we're going to be using 4½ cups of powdered sugar. It tells you when you make the cream of coconut, you use a ½ cup of the cream of coconut. So I'm going to measure this cream of coconut. And I don't know that we can use a whole ½ cup because this is really thin. But we'll see. We're going to put in 4½ cups of powdered sugar. I'm going to go ahead and put in a ¼ cup of this cream of coconut. And we're going to start adding our powdered sugar. All right, we're going to be using 1½ tablespoons of evaporated milk or cream, whatever you've got. We're going to put in a dash of salt. So you're just going to want to beat it a couple of minutes and get it nice and fluffy. And I've got my layers. I had them in the freezer, and so they're still frozen in the middle. And you're just going to put a little bit of icing on your cake plate. Put your first layer down. And cake mixes don't have a lot of cake in them. Now, if you make my homemade white layers, they're going to be a lot thicker than this, than what you're going to get out of a cake mix. Okay? So you're going to need more icing and coconut to cover them as well. But now this is just a cake mix, and I like to do this pretty thin because it's really rich. So don't put your icing on there real thick. To me, it's not as good. And then you're just going to put some coconut on there. Just like that. Now, this is way better than what you're going to get at the store if you buy coconut cakes at the grocery store. If your icing is not thin enough that it's easy to spread, you can wet your spatula and make it easier. And mine really needs to be wet just a little bit. Now, when we were making lots of cakes, we would have a spray bottle, and we would spray our cakes, and that way it was fast. So what you want to do is put the icing too much on the top, and then when you get to the edge, then you've got icing to ice the sides with. And like I said, you're not going to want a lot of icing, so try not to put it on there real thick, because this is really rich. It's got the cream of coconut in it, and really you're just trying to make something that the coconut's going to stick to and still be tasty. And now we're just going to cover it in coconut. And this is the great thing about making a coconut cake at home, is that you get to put plenty of coconut on it. And this is going to be plenty of coconut. And if this were my homemade layers, I really think once I'm done with this, I'll tell you I really think one pack would probably be enough. But you want to put it on there thick. Really press it into the sides. Once you go around it once and you know you got plenty of coconut, then just keep going with it. Trying to pile it on. Make sure that you coat all of the icing good. That's it. That's a good coconut cake. It's super easy, and you shouldn't have any problem finding the ingredients. If for any reason at all you can't find cream of coconut in your local grocery store, then just buy you some coconut extract and use the buttercream recipe and use the coconut extract to give you that coconut flavor in the icing. Here we go. Should be snow white. And it is. That's a pretty piece of coconut cake. We're going to start out combining our dry ingredients. We're going to use 2½ cups of flour. This is a ½ cup scoop, so it'll take 5 of these. Remember that my homemade cake mixes have a little more mix than most people's. I use more flour. I go 2½ instead of 2. So keep that in mind when you're putting them in pans, because you're going to have more batter than you would typically have. We're going to use a ½ teaspoon of salt and a ½ cup of Hershey's cocoa. This is a 1/4 cup, so it'll be 2 of these. brand new box of Hershey's Cocoa, ready for the holidays. So we're just going to whisk all this together good. And that way when we add these dry ingredients, the cocoa is blended into the flour good. All right, now we're going to start mixing up our cake. When you mix a cake, you always mix up your shortening and butter, and then your sugar, and then your eggs. So we're going to start with a stick of butter, which is a 1/2 cup, and a 1/2 cup of shortening. And your butter should be room temperature. It's a 1/2 cup, a 1/2 cup of shortening, now we're going to add 2 cups of sugar. These are 1/2 cup scoops. I'm going to scrape the sides a little. Now I'm going to add 3 eggs. I'm going to add them one at a time while it's running. I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And I think I'll scrape the sides a little bit better. All right, now it calls for a cup of evaporated milk and a 1/2 cup of water. We've already got a 1/2 cup of water in our measuring cup, so now I'll add evaporated milk to the 1 1/2 mark, and that will equal 1 cup of evaporated milk and a 1/2 cup of water. Make sure you shake your evaporated milk good. And if you don't have one of these old-fashioned openers, you should invest in one. You can always go to our website and check out our links for our kitchen items. It's a very affordable, all stainless steel, so it won't rust. We're going to go up to 1 1/2 cups. Okay, we're going to add this milk alternately with our flour. Once you start adding flour to a cake mix, it starts to combine with the liquid ingredients, and it starts the process of making your cake. You don't need to overbeat it, so try to get your flour in there, and then don't beat it over 2 minutes. After that, have your oven preheated and ready to bake. All right, I always take my cake pans. I always use 3 cake pans. When you make one of my homemade cakes, if it has 2 1/2 cups of flour, you're going to have to use at least 3 cake pans, whether you use an 8-inch or a 9-inch, because it's a lot of batter. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now it won't overflow a regular sheet cake pan 13 by 9, but it will overflow 2 round cake layers. So I always use Baker's Joy or some type of spray with flour in it, and I like to spray it over the sink because then it don't get all over everything. But do a good job spraying them. these ahead of time for the holidays. It's a great idea. Make your layers, put them in the freezer, wrap them really good with saran wrap, put them in the freezer. Actually, when you freeze a cake layer, it gets moisture for when you ice it and serve it. So it's a good thing to put them in the freezer first. When I make German chocolate icing, I make a lot. We're going to start out with 2 sticks of butter. We are going to put them in a batter bowl and melt it in the microwave. Now watch it, and don't let it get to boiling or anything. Just make sure that it's good and melted. And it's pretty close. Pretty hot. So we're going to add our sugar to it. That'll continue to melt down in there. And I don't like to wait till it's bubbling because you don't want it to scramble your eggs, okay? We're going to add 2 2/3 cups of sugar, granulated sugar. That's 2/3. And now we've got to put in 4 halves. 2 2/3. And you do the same amount of milk as you do sugar. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our eggs. One, 2. Now I use large eggs or extra large, either one works. Let me wipe off my counter. So you're going to just whisk these eggs in good. They're nice and fluffy looking. There's 1 1/3. Now we got to do 1 1/3 again because it's 2 2/3. And I do double this. If you don't want to make a large recipe, then you can half this, but we like a lot of icing. That's the best part of German chocolate cake, is all that yummy icing. So I want you to have enough to ice plenty of it. Maybe even ice the top of some brownies if you want to when you're done. So it's a lot of icing. Now we're just going to stir this together. And that's thick down at the bottom. So I got to be careful and not splatter it. This is that really good vanilla. Expensive kind. Now, at this point, it's time to microwave it. And when you microwave this, we're going to start it at 3 minutes and get it out and whisk it. So it's going to take a minute for that to get hot because there's a lot of it in my batter bowl. It's heavy. The icing and the cake layers in our Volume 1 cookbook, because this, of course, is something that we make a lot for the holidays, and couldn't leave this one out of my Volume 1. German chocolate cake and German chocolate icing. Starting to get good and warm. You got to make sure that sugar gets mixed in there good and melts. So it wants to stay in the bottom of your batter bowl. So you've got to take it out and whisk it. I'm going to put it back in there for a couple of minutes. Now this time when you take it out, you can kind of see that it's risen a little puffy around the edges. So I do believe it's starting to, try to get a little more creamy. And this is the science with this stuff. You can't overcook it or it turns curdled. but you want to cook it long enough. So I think 1 more minute and then it's going to be ready. That's almost done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 1/2 cups of chopped pecans in this bowl. And a whole bag of Baker's sweetened coconut 14 ounce. Then we're going to pour this over it. All right, now we're going to pour it over the coconut and the pecans. And as it cools, it'll get a little thicker. So like I bought a 9-inch board, but I'm using an 8-inch cake. So I cut it. I laid the pan down on top of this and drew a line. And then I cut it just a little bit larger to hold a little bit of that icing on the edge of the cake once I put it on this board. And I will actually ice the cake elevated over this right here. That's how we'll do it. But we're going to wait just a few minutes. Okay, I cooked this a little bit more because it wouldn't thicken it up quite like I wanted it to. You can tell on the bottom of this bowl is still kind of runny even when it's cool, and it's supposed to be thick. And you can tell by looking at it, it's thick. And it didn't separate or anything. You just got to watch it close. And once it's thick, even if it's hot, you can ice with it. You can see the different consistency. Now you can wait till yours is a little thicker if you want to. If that would be easier on you. Always flip your cake upside down when you're icing it, like that. So you don't want to ice it right side up. It's nice and flat on the bottom, and that's why you do it that way. Now for German chocolate, you can put a few holes in it. And you could actually do that after it's on there too. Now I'm going to put the runniest in the middle so that it might seep down into the cake. Good thing about making plenty of icing like we did is you get to put plenty on it. Okay, we'll get us another layer. This is pretty runny to do the sides. I may let it thicken a little bit more, and then we'll come back and do the sides. But the good thing about doing it while it's wet like this in between the layers and on the top is you can run your holes down in it, and it seeps down into the cake. Okay, I cooked this a little bit more because it wouldn't thicken it up quite like I wanted it to. You can tell on the bottom of this bowl is still kind of runny even when it's cool, and it's supposed to be thick. And you can tell by looking at it, it's thick. And it didn't separate or anything. You just got to watch it close. And once it's thick, even if it's hot, you can ice with it. You can see the different consistency of that compared to what I had. Now, what I did earlier is not going to hurt anything because it's soaked all down in the cake layers, and it's going to be delicious. So we're going to finish icing it up real quick. I'm actually going to put it on top of something because it's hot on the bottom. So I don't want it to get too hot on my counter. All right, let me grab a spatula. And now we're going to start putting it on the sides of the cake. So I'm using a spatula to do the side, and the best way to do it is just put it on there and spread it quick. And if you're going to do it hot like I'm doing it, try not to get burnt. And you can wait until it cools all the way down to ice it. I can just ice a cake. You know, I've been icing cakes forever, and so I'm not intimidated by a thin icing like a lot of people would be. But that's one reason you do pick it up and ice it over the top of the bowl when you do a thin icing like this. I have to do my Japanese fruit cake icing the same way, and it's got coconut in it like this. Okay, I think that's got it. And now you can just sit it on your cake plate. Let's make the top real pretty. This has got a lot of icing on it, y'all. It's going to be really good. If you do make your cake this tall, you got to have a really tall dome. This is a big piece of cake. And it's fresh, so it hasn't been refrigerated or anything yet. So keep that in mind when it hits the plate. You can see all this goo in the middle. It looks nice and moist. It's light and fluffy. That is a delicious German chocolate cake. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is mix up our dry ingredients and get them sifted in together, and I just do it with a whisk. So we're going to go ahead and add this to our bowl. That's 2½ cups. There's 1, 2, 1/2. 2½ cups. All right, this is an all-purpose flour. Now we're going to add 3 tablespoons of cocoa. Everybody loves red velvet, but it does have just a touch of cocoa in it. Recipes in our Volume 1 cookbook. All right, so now we're going to do baking soda, and I believe it's a 1/2 teaspoon. And then you've got salt is a 1/2 teaspoon. And then the last but not least is our baking powder, and it's 3 teaspoons. 3 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now I'm just going to take my little whisk and whisk this together. And this is our dry ingredients. Mix our butter and sugar together until it's nice and fluffy. This is 1½ sticks of butter, which is 3/4 cup. 2 cups of granulated sugar. There's 1 and 2. We're going to turn this on. We're going to add 3 eggs, and we're going to add them one at a time. One, 2, 3. All right. Now we're going to add a tablespoon of vinegar, 1 ounce container of red food coloring, 3/4 cups of oil. This is corn oil. You can use any vegetable oil. We're going to start adding our dry ingredients, a 1/2 cup at a time, and we'll alternate that with our other liquid. I'm going to open up a can of evaporated milk. You can use 1.5 cups of buttermilk, or you can use a cup of evaporated milk and a 1/2 cup of water. And that's what we're doing today, just to be a little different, because it's an option on all of my cakes. Now I'm going to get me some water, and we're going to go ahead and add about a cup of these dry ingredients and start mixing this up. And then the only thing that we got left is to add our dry ingredients in the rest of this water. Easy. Easy cake. All right, by the time your 2 minutes is up, you should have everything picked up off the table. Got plenty of time. We're going to get this out of here and get our cake pans over here. Okay, I like to use baking spray. You can grease and flour your cake pans if you want to. I guess we could do it just for funsies, since Mama always did it that way. Why don't we just do it today? So you just put a nice layer on them. These are USA pans, made in the USA. Very, very good cake pans. So if you need some new ones, I love 8-inch cake pans because it makes the cake taller when it comes out of the, when you get it iced and pretty. It makes it taller and more showy, I think. But now you can use 9-inch all day long. So you just grab a little flour, put it in the pan. Go around. Let it get all over the sides. And then you beat it. And you do the next one. To make sure that all of them are the same size. I did that the last time I made a cake and it worked good. I'll go get my scale and we'll weigh them and make sure they're the same weight. I just use my mail scale. I don't have a special scale for the kitchen. I just use the same scale I use to mail cookbooks. This one is 2.4. Not quite 2. 2.1. 2.2. I was close on 2 of them. 2.2. Look at there, y'all. So now they're all equal. And clean them up if you got them dirty. And Mama always leveled hers off like that. The great thing about measuring them, I know that you don't have to do that. It's just a cake, And if you're taking it somewhere and you want it to look special, then you can get the weight on them like I did. And that way when you ice it, it's going to look beautiful. All the layers will be the same size. All right, we're going to get these in the oven and we're going to bake it until the cake starts pulling away from the sides and the middle springs back, okay? A toothpick comes out clean. All the cakes cannot be timed by a recipe. Remember that. Everybody's oven's a little bit different and the pan sizes can be different. And so you just make sure you watch it. Don't open the oven when you're making a cake for at least 25 minutes, okay? Because you don't want it to fall. After 25 minutes, then you can check on it. I am going to put one of these in the back and 2 in the front. And the one in the back will get done quicker, and so I'll have to take it out first. If you'll take a look, You can see that it's coming away from the sides a little bit, and it springs back, and the toothpick comes out clean. We're going to set these aside and flip them out in about 10 minutes. I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, it's time to flip these upside down. One, two. I want y'all to see how far apart from the sides. Once you take them out and they sit for a minute, you can see that they've come further away from the sides. And they should be just cool enough that you can actually touch this without getting burned. It released them all very well. They're gorgeous cake layers. And they're going to be super moist and delicious. So I'll see you after they cool down, and we're going to ice them with some good cream cheese icing. We've toasted what pecans I do have. I'm just going to put them in here and chop them up a little bit, and we're just going to use them on top of the cake. Normally I would put a cup in the icing, but today I'm just going to make the icing plain and just put these on the top because I'm all out of pecans. Everybody loves a yummy red velvet cake, and one of the things they like the most is the cream cheese icing. So we are going to make the most delicious cream cheese icing and ice our cake. All right, we've got 2 sticks of butter in the mixer at room temperature. And then you need to bring your cream cheese to room temperature as well so that it gets nice and creamy and mixes well with the butter. You're going to have 2 8-ounce blocks of that. I'm scraping it all, making sure I get my money's worth. Next one. And you're just going to mix this until it's nice and creamy. This is a Bosch mixer, and it has paddles that come with it automatically. If you decide to buy one of these this Christmas, I would suggest you get the Baker's Bundle, and you will know what I'm talking about once you get to the link on the Amazon page that I send you to. But if you get the Baker's Bundle, you get all the accessories that go with it for just $50 more, which is way worth the price. And so I encourage you to go get you one of these for Christmas this year, or someone you love. All right. And you're going to see that even making a double batch of icing, that this bowl has a large capacity. And these paddles, these scrapers work really well on it, and they're doing their job like they're supposed to. That looks really good and creamy. So we are going to start adding the powdered sugar. I'm going to add a cup, and then we'll start adding the rest of it a little bit at a time. I'm just going to pour it out of the bag today because I'm making a lot of icing. Now, if you want to use my recipe, you can. It's 4 1/2 cups of powdered sugar. Put just a little cream in it. You're going to use a little bit of vanilla flavoring, and this is my delicious Madagascar bourbon extract. Teaspoon. We're going to continue adding the powdered sugar. All right, we're going to turn it off and get it out of here and ice this delicious red velvet cake. Put my icing right here. I'm going to take these pecans that I only had a few, so we're just going to dress up the top of the cake with them. They smell good. I toasted them just slightly, okay? And I don't really want all those in there, just the bigger pieces. I don't like all the pecan dust on the cake. I don't think it's pretty. Myself. And get rid of it. That's good. You always want to toast your pecans whole You never chop your pecans and then toast them. You always toast them whole and then you chop them, okay? Otherwise, they can get too brown or burnt. Today, me and Chris have decided that we're going to ice 2 of these layers and leave one out for us to put in the freezer for later. And that way, for the holidays, I will have iced single layer cakes that we can take somewhere. And that way you can have more than one kind. And I'll go ahead and show you, if you use an 8-inch layer with my cake recipes, and all of my cake recipes have 2.5 cups of flour, you're going to see that a standard cake plate dome barely will fit over it. By the time you ice this cake, it would hit the dome, okay? So in order to make an 8-inch layer cake with one of my recipes, you need to have a lot larger, tall dome. I have this one that I've listed on the website. It is very expensive, but buddy, you can make a huge cake and be able to use this dome to cover it. And so if you don't have a tall dome and you want to make a tall, showy cake, this is my favorite cake dome for that. Isn't it pretty? You're going to see that when you make my cake layers, they're nice and flat. They don't rise in the middle like a cake mix does. I like this cake plate because it has little dots on it and you can tell exactly where you are in the middle of it when you put your cake down. The key to icing a cake so that you don't get crumbs in your icing is never touch the cake with your spatula. Always stay on top of the icing. I want to put a good bit on in between the layers of this cake. You want to start with a lot of icing on the top when you ice a cake. Always stay on the icing, not the cake. When you do that, then you don't get crumbs. In your icing. And I always start from the top and push down like this before I get the sides. Whoops, there was some crumbs. I about messed it up, y'all. Now we're going to make sure we got plenty on the side so I can make the sides pretty. Okay, we got a comb, we've got a small side, and we've got a large side. And when you're using a red layer like this or a chocolate layer, you definitely don't want to use this one, okay? Because it would dig down into the cake crumbs, and you don't want that to happen. So we're going to use this side and just scrape the side of the cake. There we have it. You can comb it or you can swirl it. I mean, whatever you want to do. Now I'm going to get the extra off the bottom. And we are going to swirl the top. There we have it. Now, some people use the cake crumbs, but because my cakes are so flat, I couldn't really grab any crumbs from it and it be successful. These are wet from the top. And but they do that and they sprinkle them on a red velvet cake, you know, and it looks really pretty. So you can do that if you want to. And I'll show you. I can show you with this one how to do that, since we're just going to ice it for us. But you just take a little bit out of one of them like that. And you run it through a little sifter. just to dress it up. Then they know for sure it's a red velvet. There you have it. And now we're going to do the pecans around the very bottom. Okay. So let me get this. Get me a paper towel. And we're just going to put them right around the bottom. And then you're just going to take your extra, put it up. And I mean, I barely had enough. So if you can toast the whole cup, it's even better. And remember, this is just an 8-inch. If you use a 9-inch, it wouldn't be as thick. So if you're making 9-inch layers, you might could get them iced in under a dome. All right, now we have one for the freezer. I'll slide it in the freezer and let it freeze, and that way the icing will be frozen before I wrap it, okay? So slide it in there, let it freeze hard, and then wrap it with plastic wrap, and it'll be ready to go. All you gotta do is get it out, unwrap it, and let it come to room temperature before you serve it. All right, we're gonna give it a slice, or get a slice. Homemade cake. Red velvet cake from scratch. Delicious, moist red velvet layers. It looks delish. And it looks moist. Let's get a bite. Woo! Looks delicious and moist. Hey y'all, it's Tammy with Collard Valley Cooks, and today we're making one of my family's favorites, and my friends, of course, Italian cream cake. This comes out of my first cookbook, and it is one of the things I used to make all the time. It is so good, y'all. So we're going to start out with 4 ounces of room temperature cream cheese. You're going to use a half stick of butter at room temperature, a cup of buttermilk, a half cup of water, 3 eggs, a white cake mix, and then you're going to toast some coconut pecans and have them ready to go in there too. We're going to get started mixing it up in the mixer. You're going to start with your cream cheese and your butter. Okay, this is the recipe in our first cookbook, Italian cream cake. And you're going to start with 4 ounces of room temperature cream cheese. I'm going to go ahead and slide this off. And a half stick of room temperature butter, and you're going to cream these two together. Now I'm going to add my eggs. Alternate my cake mix with my buttermilk. I'll put about half of this in. I'm going to beat it good. Our buttermilk. The rest of our cake mix. And the half cup of warm water. Okay, it's a beautiful cake batter. I toasted a cup of Baker's flaked coconut, which is sweetened coconut, and a cup of large, they're chopped nuts, but they're pretty large, and I toasted them in my air fryer. And if you want to know how to do that, just look in the description post at the instructions. But we're going to be using this on the top of the cake after we ice it. And we're also going to put a cup of this in our cake layer. So we're going to go ahead and add a cup of these toasted pecans and coconut. All right, that's 1 cup of toasted coconut and pecans. We're going to mix this up and get them in the layers. All right, we're going to talk about a couple of really important things. When you toast your pecans and your coconut, whether you do it on the stove top in a skillet and turn it continuously until it's nice and toasty, you can put it in the oven at 350 degrees, but you still have to move it around the pan because it's going to get darker around the edges, okay? So you have to turn it in the baking sheet or even in your air fryer. If you want to use an air fryer, you can do it, but make sure you don't have tiny little pieces of pecans or they'll just drop down into the bottom. And you will be putting it on 270 degrees, and you're going to actually take a spoon and mix it up every couple of minutes until it's a beautiful golden color. One more thing, make sure you use a white cake mix because yellow cake mix has a very strong distinctive flavor and it will not taste as good and delicious and taste more like a homemade cake if you use the yellow. Do not use yellow in any of my cakes, whether it's the red velvet, the Italian cream, the strawberry. Make sure you grab that white cake mix, please. Okay, now we're going to spray our pans with some Baker's Joy and we're going to get these in the oven. I like to use 3 8-inch layers because it makes a tall cake, and that's just what I like to do. It's not going to take as long to bake mine as it will yours if you just use 2 layers. So make sure you keep that in mind and bake these at 350 degrees until they're done, until a toothpick comes out clean. Start checking them in about 25 minutes. My friend, Baker's Joy. And remember, if you like anything that you see, you can get it on our website at www.collardvalleycooks.com. That keeps me from having to answer a lot of questions, y'all. Alrighty. We're going to get these in the oven. And boy, this is so good with that toasted coconut and those pecans. You can't get a better cake layer, I promise. I remember the first time I made an Italian cream cake. I used the Southern Living cookbook, and I beat the egg whites, and I did all this stuff, and took me forever to make the cake. And now I just use this recipe, and to me it's just as good. It really is to me. Looks really pretty. All right, we're going to get them in the oven. Okay, these are ready. They are light on the top. They have just started pulling away from the sides of the pan, and that's what you want. They're done, but really pale. They're going to be pretty. So we're going to set them right here on the table and let them cool off for about 5 minutes, and then after that we'll flip them out. Now since it's a cake mix, you can actually go ahead and flip them out. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm going to go ahead and do that and let them start cooling down. And that way they won't get any darker on the bottom. It's another good thing about using the cake mix. You can flip them out fast. Go ahead and have that parchment cut and ready It doesn't take a whole lot for me to get worn out, so I do things in moderation. It's just better that way when you have fibromyalgia and a few things like I do. It doesn't mean you can't get it done. It just means it takes you a little bit longer. So if you're like me, get up off that couch, make your layers one day, wrap them up in some wrap, and then ice it the next day. Take it easy. Just put it in the refrigerator or in the freezer. Better yet, put it in the freezer. And that way it'll be easy to ice. All right, y'all, it's time to make the icing, and we're going to be using 4.5 cups of powdered sugar. I did sift it because it was kind of lumpy. And then we've got a stick of room temperature butter, an 8-ounce package of cream cheese. We're going to be using a little bit of cream. We've got our toasted coconut and pecans, the tip, ready to make the cake pretty, and we are ready to roll. So we're going to start off in the mixer with the cream cheese and the butter, and we're going to mix them until they're nice and fluffy. Now we're going to start alternating some powdered sugar and cream, and that's all we need. I'm going to put just a little bit of vanilla in it too. All right, it's ready. All right. We've got a bag here. We're going to put a border around the top of the cake when we're done. And here's our layers. We're going to get started icing them. You just, I like to make a 3-layer cake, and I like to use an 8-inch layer, and that way it fits on a plate good with plenty of room if you want to put a border on it. Of course, you don't have to put a border on it. This cake is really soft, and so I need to use my spatula, not this. This one's kind of got a lip on it. I'm going to take it off because I don't want it sticking out. So all I did is take the little edge off so that it wouldn't be sticking out. Of course, we're probably going to cover it with pecans anyway, so it probably don't even matter, but I'm going to go ahead and clean this one up too because it made my hands sticky. Okay, if you freeze your layers, there's 2 good things about it. 1, it makes the layers moister, and 2, it's easier to ice. So it's always good to throw them in the freezer, and of course you wrap them up first. And I always tell people to pay attention how I'm holding the spatula if they want to learn how to ice a cake and not get the crumbs all over the place. You really need to use your pointer here, and you don't hold it flat like this. You hold it at an angle. I'm going to get these crumbs off the side before I ice the sides so that they don't get stuck up in there. Okay, our last layer is going on the top. And cake mixes don't have a lot of cake in them anymore. And that's one reason I like to do 3 layers too, is because they really don't get very tall. And if you use 9-inch layers, use 2 layers because it just wouldn't be very pretty if they were much thinner than what I've got. If you're making one of my homemade cakes, they actually have a lot more cake batter, so you could use 3 9s and it still look pretty good. All right, to ice a cake, so you take your icing, put it on the top of the cake. You take your spatula and hold it like I was telling you, and you push it to the side. You grab it, and then you spread it. And this keeps the crumbs from getting in the icing. I'm trying to save enough icing to do the border at the top to make it pretty. I think I can have it a little bit more. And you can go over the sides with a little bit of flake coconut as well. My border tip, that's my favorite, we actually let it fall down into the garbage disposal and messed it up. So today I'm going to use this and just see how it turns out. I'll have to order me another one of my faves. We're going to get this in here. Get a border around the top. And this is a really pretty cake when it's done. All right, we'll see how this looks. We're just going to do a swirl around the edge. So you put that in the middle, and then I'm going to pick up the cake and put this coconut around the edges. And the easiest way to do it is to pick up the cake. I see a lot of people put stuff on the sides of cakes, and they try to keep it on the stand. And this is the easiest way to do it right here. Just pick it up, break it back into your container. Time to cut the cake. It's still a little bit cold. Just see how good it looks. Super moist. You cannot get an Italian cream cake anywhere better than this. It's delicious. Hey y'all, it's Chris and Tammy with Collard Valley Cooks. And today we are making my favorite chocolate cake layers and chocolate icing. Both of these recipes are in our first cookbook. You can't find a better chocolate cake. All right, y'all, we're going to start by adding our dry ingredients. We're going to sift those together in a bowl, set them aside, and then start our cake mix. All right, so you're going to use 2.5 cups of self-rising flour. There's 1 cup, 2 cups, and a 1/2 cup. You're going to add your soda and baking powder. So we're going to put in a teaspoon. Even if this is self-rising, this is a good recipe, so trust it. Teaspoon of baking powder. 3/4 cups of Hershey's cocoa. Or whatever cocoa you can find, but my favorite's Hershey's. All right, and then you've got soda, a 1/2 teaspoon. Half teaspoon of soda. I'm sure when my pup hears me say that, she thinks I'm talking about her. Because our dog's name is Soda. All right, so we're going to sift this together. So that's your flour, your soda, your baking powder, and your cocoa. And I just like to do this because it really distributes the cocoa and the cake batter better than just throwing cocoa in there, okay? So this is my favorite way to make chocolate cake, is to sift it together first. Now we're going to set that aside and start mixing up our cake. We're going to start, let's see, with sugar, butter, cooking oil, and eggs. So you're going to have 3/4 cups of cooking oil. I'm using corn oil. Just any canola or vegetable oil is fine. 3 eggs. There's 1. 2. 3. Our butter, which is a stick at room temperature, which is a 1/2 cup. And I use salted butter in everything I make. So no matter which recipe you got, if I'm saying butter, it's salted. Okay? And then you got your sugar, and your sugar is 2 1/4 cups. There's 1, 2 1/4. Now I'm going to turn it on. Oh, by the way, I'm using this old-fashioned mixer today because my daughter is coming over. She thought this was the coolest thing that we got, this mixer. It's an old antique. So that's what we're using today. Since she's coming, I'm making her cake with it. And the cool thing about this mixer is if you look, it'll say blend cookies, muffins, 1 bowl cakes, and it tells you what number, add dry ingredients to put the mixer on to do stuff like that. And we're about to add dry ingredients, so we'll put it on that one. Now this cake has a very wet batter, okay? So I'm gonna just go ahead and start putting stuff in here. We're gonna add sour cream. It's a 1/2 cup of sour cream, a cup of milk, I'm going to go ahead and put some vanilla in it. I'm going to start adding my dry ingredients. You can add them a 1/2 cup at a time or 1/4 cup, however you want to do it. And once you get about half of your ingredients in there, then you're going to put in your coffee. This is 8 ounces of strong coffee. Now I'm going to turn it up. And we're going to beat this about 2 minutes. It looks really good. Now this is a simple cake, super easy to make. I mean, it's really easy. It's got a very liquidy batter. It is super moist and delicious. And if you don't like coffee, try to use the coffee anyway because it tastes so good with chocolate. You're not going to notice, you're not going to taste the chocolate. Just enhances the flavor of the chocolate. All right, when you're mixing a cake batter, you shouldn't overmix it. And so you should mix it about 2 minutes once your flour's added in there. And that should do it. That's all you got to do. All right, I'm going to spray a 13 by 9 sheet cake pan. And I'm making a sheet cake today instead of a layer cake. It's so much easier on us and quicker. It's easier to serve too. And we're going to make May's favorite chocolate icing. So you'll get to see that too. Now, all of my cake layers that's in the first cookbook have more flour, much more flour in them than a cake mix has. So you're going to find that they're going to make a lot deeper cake than a cake mix. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. Boy, it's going to be good. I put too much batter in my cake, y'all, and it ran over in my new oven. You really shouldn't fill it over halfway full, and it was about 3/4 full. So save your extra batter and make cupcakes out of it. I messed up and put it all in my 13 by 9, and so it's in the bottom of my stove. But it looks so good. It's going to be delicious. And now I got a stove to clean up, so don't make that mistake. My cake batter recipes make a lot of cake batter. So no matter what pan you're using, make sure that you don't fill it over halfway full. The only cake that's in there that doesn't rise very much is the carrot cakes and the cakes that have a lot of fruit in them, like my fruit cake, that kind of stuff. But just a normal layer cake, if you use my homemade layers, I wouldn't fill it over half full. But don't it look delicious? And I can eat a piece of it. Now, I will tell you this. If you're going to make a 13 by 9 instead of a round layer, I would bake it at 325, not 350, because it takes a lot longer to cook a large cake like this and get it completely done in the middle than it does a round layer cake, okay? So I would turn the oven down to 325 degrees, which is what I did with this cake. And you can tell it's not a bit too brown. And it is so good. All right, I'm getting me a piece of parchment. And I'm actually going to flip this cake out, mainly because we're doing a video today. And I want it to have time to cool off good before I ice it. But now you can leave this in the pan and just ice it in the pan if you want to. I just don't have time for it to cool off. So what I want to do is flip it out to help cool it off sooner. But you don't have to do that. Since this is a very delicate cake, I'm going to do it this way. It's a super soft crumb. But it's a very pretty layer and very tall. So, I mean, if you've got a regular oven that you can put a pan underneath it, you can go ahead and make it like this and let it boil over if you want to. And that way it's a nice, big, tall layer. And if not, that's fine too, whatever you want to do. But look how pretty and tall that is for a birthday cake. So we're going to ice this with May's favorite chocolate icing. So we'll mix that up right quick. I'm going to go put this in the big freezer and get it cooled down some. This icing is my family's favorite fudge icing. It is a lot like the icing that people make on the stovetop without all the fuss. It tastes like it. You can make it really rich in chocolate by using water, or you can make it milk chocolate by using milk. My family likes it made with water. Okay, they like it real fudgy. So we are going to use 3/4 cups of cocoa, 3/4 cups of water with a stick and a half of butter, and we're actually going to put this in the microwave and get it warm enough to melt the butter good. So it's a stick and a half, which is 3/4 cups of butter. with 3/4 cups of water, with 3/4 cups of cocoa. And so the only other thing we use is 8 cups of powdered sugar and some vanilla flavoring. So we're going to put this in the microwave, all right? And I'm going to put a cloth over it so it don't make a mess. Because Lord knows I've already got a mess in my stove today. I don't need a mess in my microwave too. Now I'm going to sift this powdered sugar because we've moved and we've been all over the place and it is just not light and fluffy like it should be, all right? So I'm just going to measure it. There's 2 cups of it, and I'm not putting my cocoa in there because I don't like getting cocoa in my sifter, okay? So we will whisk in the cocoa once we're finished doing this part. All right, that's good. That's plenty of powdered sugar. Now we're going to add our cocoa. This makes a lot of icing. Okay, so just put it in your mixing bowl and turn it on a low speed and let it mix up before you start adding your liquid. You can tell on the side of that bowl I need to go around it with a spatula. So you just want to mix your cocoa and your powdered sugar up good. And now you're going to add your warm butter and water, okay? Okay. Okay, I'm going to add a little vanilla to it. That's a little bitty piece of butter melting right there on the top. That's what that is. Boy, that looks good, don't it? Looks very delicious. We're just going to take this and put it on the sheet pan and ice it for her birthday. Let me get me some scissors and trim it a little bit. The actual parchment part. And we're not decorating it or anything. I just wanted to ice it up. I wanted to show y'all that this has plenty of icing in the recipe. All right, I'm going to grab my turntable just because it's easier. Now, if you want your icing thin, like if you're icing round layers and you want to put it on there really thin, you can do it with this icing. But if you don't ice it immediately, you can tell it's starting to get thick already. You can always microwave it a little bit. Just warm it up a little bit if you got it in a glass bowl like this. So I'm just going to put a lot of icing on the top to start with. And this is going to want to slide, so I'm just going to hold on to it. I didn't put icing underneath the parchment. All right. But I just wanted y'all to see how pretty this is if you want to make a birthday cake out of it. And of course, we're going to cut it and let y'all see how it looks on the inside as well. The key to icing chocolate is make sure you're always on the icing and not on the cake. And have plenty of icing on the top to push it over. And if you do that, then it usually works pretty good. I'm just trying to get the corners pretty, and then I'm going to put a design in it. But you got to hurry because it does, start setting up pretty good. All right, here we go. Then we can do a little bit of a swirl on the side. You can't beat it. And there you have it, a good old chocolate cake. I promise you'll like it. And you don't have to flip it upside down and ice it like I did. You could just ice it in the sheet pan and make it simple. If you ice it in the sheet pan, I would make a half a recipe because you can see I've got extra. This makes a lot of icing in case you want to make one of those really tall stack chocolate cakes, you know, with the thin layers. But you can make a half recipe and ice it in the sheet pan and make everybody just very happy. Super moist. And remember, we just iced this cake. Let's get a bite. Yummy. Boy, that's good. That is so good. It would be absolutely delicious with some vanilla ice cream. Woo! Y'all give my chocolate cake a try. You're going to love it. And we will see you next time on Collard Valley Cooks, where we cook like our mamas did. Bye, y'all. Love ya.